are redacted. It was a email between a local Secret Service officer, and Ron Elgis, the sort of representative of the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. So it was the FOIA request was actually through the Secret Service requesting communications about the Trump rally, which was on September 12th. And through that FOIA request, we got this email, and then we followed up on that. Using that email, we followed up with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office in a separate FOIA request, attempting to get more documents so that we could build out the story, and they basically denied that this had ever happened. They denied that these documents existed, denied that this email existed, and currently we're following up using a service called Muckrock, which is a FOIA request service, basically being like, we know that you have these documents. We have some of them. You legally have to provide them. But Nevada is really difficult because Nevada doesn't have a formal appeal process. So it's really difficult to get documents if a law enforcement agency doesn't want to hand them over.
Have you tried contacting the U.S. Secret Service and requesting information about this?
We could, but we would most likely just end up getting the same documents we already have, just because we've already filed those requests. So we'd end up just getting the same documents, and what we're really looking for are internal documents within the Douglas County Sheriff's Office.
But I mean, like even contacting their press office to see if they have a statement about this, a comment.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely we're continuing to work on follow-ups. So we're working on just attempting to get any sort of documents we can, or any sort of answer we can, detailing what the relationship is between the Douglas County Sheriff's Office and law enforcement in Northern Nevada in general, and these local militia groups. Because what we don't want to see is that not only is that this is typical for Northern Nevada. What we're hoping is that Douglas County is sort of an outlier in Northern Nevada, but there's a possibility that this is sort of standard procedure in Northern Nevada, and that presents a very dangerous opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would encourage you to really follow this up. This is a huge story, and if you can really build it up, it's going to get national coverage. How did you get interested in all this stuff, following these militias around and all these protests and stuff? What motivates you for that?
So I started covering conflict just in general when I entered college. I entered college wanting to become a photojournalist, which is still sort of what I'm pursuing, and I wanted to cover conflict because conflict photojournalism really appealed to me. And so what I ended up doing was driving up to Portland, Oregon, and sort of documenting the Proud Boys' presence there and how they would sort of come into Portland, and anti-fascist groups would come in, and documenting those like almost routine clashes. And so that's where I started. And what ended up happening was I was covering that more and more, and I want to say sometime in 2018, like late 2018, I became interested in QAnon, and I was like, this is something that's developing, that's very, very interesting. I think it's something that could become very important in the next couple of years. And so I started doing research on that, and that sort of developed into a relationship a research relationship with sort of cultic extremism, which introduced me to militias, introduced me to lots of different far-right groups. So I got introduced basically through a relationship with wanting to study QAnon and how that sort of developed, and documenting groups like the Proud Boys through photojournalism. And that brought me to militias, that brought me to local QAnon groups, that brought me to Christian identity in Northern Nevada, and covering all of those things.
By the way, you mentioned the Proud Boys. If people go to my Patreon, I had an ex-Proud Boy on the show, and we have their manifesto and their initiation documents. It says all over it, top secret. If you're not a member, you have to leave right now. But we have all those documents up on our Patreon. It's OppermanReport.com. People can check it out. Now, you mentioned QAnon a few times. What'd you discover? First of all, why don't you describe what QAnon is and what you find out about them?
So, I would describe QAnon as a nationalistic cult that has developed on the internet in the last 3 years and has sort of created a life on its own and really, really developed into a political force and a really, really dangerous force. QAnon, in sort of its barest forms, is essentially a conspiracy theory, a New World Order conspiracy theory. It's this idea that there are elites who run the country, and they control the press, they control the media, and they control everything. And basically, what they claim is that Donald Trump has been sent, was elected, and is going to try and defeat this New World Order, which they refer to as the Deep State, and Q is a military intelligence operative or military intelligence team who is assisting Donald Trump in this and is sort of providing contact between the American people and Donald Trump. And that's sort of the bare bones of it. In actuality, what it really turns out to be is it is a very cultic group where you've got these people who really should be treated less as, a lot of times they're treated in media or by people in social media as crazy people. Really should be treated more like cult victims, because to them Donald Trump has taken almost a messianic form where he's delivering America, he's supposed to save America, and Q, this person online in forum groups, is sort of their prophet. He's their go-between. And it's become really dangerous because unlike a conspiracy theory where you can have a discussion around it and maybe it's political but it's not actually dangerous, because this has developed into an almost religious-like belief system, there are people who are willing to devote their entire lives to this. And there's a possibility people are willing to commit extreme violence in the name of this belief system. And we've already seen, I think there have been a couple of murders related to this. There have been a couple of child kidnappings in relation to this belief system. And there is sort of in the research community surrounding this group, this sort of extremism research community, there is a worry that as the January 20th date approaches when Joe Biden will be sworn in as president, the believers in the QAnon belief system will become more and more violent because they believe that they're basically they believe that their Messiah is being taken away, and so we have this really dangerous belief system going on now where these people are essentially cult victims and they think that their cult leader is being stolen. And so there's this worry that they will strike out in violence, and that could be really, really dangerous for the American people.
Yeah, they do view themselves as patriots, and well-meaning people, I guess. On the one hand, they believe they're patriots and they believe in the Constitution, but then at the same time they want to suspend all civil rights, round people up, send them to Gitmo. This crazy talk about sealed indictments and stuff. And it's spilled over now because here we have, General Flynn was the former national security director for the White House. This guy had a cabinet position. And his attorney is a Sidney Powell woman who supports all this QAnon stuff. She has QAnon stuff all over her Twitter page. And General Flynn is openly right now calling for a suspension of the Constitution's martial law he's calling for. Incredibly bizarre times.
Yeah, General Flynn himself has. There's a swearing in that QAnon will do, and he put out a video a couple of months ago of him swearing in his family on the 4th of July using this. It's the swearing in of a digital soldier, I think is what it's called. I don't have the exact terminology right in front of me, but he swore in his family and himself in this QAnon swearing in process, essentially like devoting themselves to QAnon. And he's, like you said, he's the former national security director. He was the head of the DIA. He's ostensibly a very important person in the U.S. defense community, and he is a full believer, or at least believes enough in it to be willing to take advantage of it for his own personal gain.
He's linking himself to it. I can't believe anybody at that level of power would believe it, because it's just so ridiculous. But he's definitely linking himself to it and motivating that crowd. I forgot what I was going to ask you. We're here today with JJ Mazzucatelli. You could find him on Twitter at JJ_Mazzucatelli. He's with the Reno Worker that you can find on his Patreon on the Reno Worker. And we're talking about how these militias up there in Reno are working hand in hand with the cops. Right-wing militias are working with the cops, effecting arrests, working security during a Donald Trump appearance up there in Reno at the airport. Just fascinating. This is Pulitzer Prize territory work if you can get some attention to this here. Well, JJ, when we left, we were talking about QAnon, right? Are you familiar with that story that just came out this week? It's completely insane. This retired 3-star general who's claiming that they traced the votes to Frankfurt, Germany, and the CIA, and Trump sent the Department of Defense over there, and they got into a firefight with the CIA that was guarding these servers. Are you familiar with that story?
I'm somewhat familiar with it. If I recall, I think I saw something about it, read a little bit about it, and pretty much dismissed it out of hand because I believe it was General Michael Flynn who was sort of the source for that story, and he's not the most credible when it comes to sources. He's a pretty devout QAnon, at least promoter, if not follower.
Yeah. It's General Thomas McClerney. Was a former 3-star. Okay. He's a real 3-star general. But I think Flynn did come out in support of this crazy story. And this guy actually just recently testified at one of these state hearings on the election stuff. And he swore under oath. He says, yeah, we have hackers who trace this down. It's just, we are living in a twilight zone, man.
Yeah, it seems to be. That's right. I remember now. I saw it connected to General Flynn, but that's right. He wasn't the general. The general zeitgeist around, particularly this election, but just in general, these last couple of years, has been one with just a complete rejection of, I think, fact and sort of a objective reality. It's when the American public has sort of decided that we'd rather live in a subjective reality than an objective one, which means it's almost impossible nowadays to figure out what's real. And so we have people claiming that the vote was hacked from Germany and that there was a CIA firefight, and it's almost impossible to tell whether that's true or not because the people who are behind it, the sources who are behind it, might be politically motivated in why they're disclosing these things. They might be just lying in an attempt to get more people on their side. It's incredibly difficult.
It really is. It's amazing what crazy times we're living. It's almost like in ancient times when, because there's so much rumor and gossip going back and forth, and like there's superstition, that in the ancient times, they thought, well, if you throw a virgin into the volcano, it'll stop. It'll stop the storms. Yeah. It's almost what we're getting to now, man. It's just fascinating how total rejection of reality, like you said.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's one of those things where I do my best when writing a story. This is sort of my personal policy where if I can't personally attest to what's being said in the story, if I can't like say I was there, I saw this, I don't want to write about it, because it's become so difficult to find sources who are trustworthy. Like for instance, going back to the militia story that we were talking